What is up, Guardians? It is your boy Turk here at SGN Hub, bringing you another Destiny 2 build video, and this is going to be for the Titans, especially those Titans that have been potentially looking for a build that not only lets you punch through your enemies, but also keep your teammates alive. And if that is what you're looking for, then this Strand Titan setup is more than likely going to be a build for you. Currently, what we're using is going to be the new and improved, I wouldn't say new and improved, but newly added addition to the Titan set, the Edge of Intent, along with the Wormgods Caress, and combine that with the Banner of War, and we have the definition of sustain, folks, and also endless melee damage, as well as the constant healing and unstoppable perks added to the glaive this season. So without further ado, let's hop into it. First and foremost, the build is going to be primarily about the synergy between the exotic glaive, the Edge of Intent, and also the melee damage and the healing effects that we're going to get from that combination. So the way that the glaives have been reworked is now we will look at it actually is going to be the Edge of Intent. For those that aren't familiar with it, first and foremost, the exotic trait on it is as follows. When the weapon is fully charged, consume the next charge before firing to make your next shot deploy a healing turret on impact that provides cure and restoration to nearby allies. And to those that aren't aware, that functions just like the mask of the speaker. This was changed not too long ago. Now, the synergy that we're talking about is along here, you can see that melee and projectile damage charge this weapon, and when fully charged, we activate that turret that we just mentioned. And along with our exotic pairing, the Wormgods Caress, that is where the combination of those things come into play. The Wormgods Caress is obviously the exotic gloves for the Titan, and for those that aren't familiar, this reads as follows. Burning Fists, defeating a target with a melee or a finisher grants escalating melee damage, which decays over time, and higher levels of Burning Fists grant increased weapon damage. Now, the reason I'm going to briefly talk about all three of these things separately, I will get into the aspects and fragments, one by one, but I'm really just talking about the synergy these three things are going to have in terms of the way the build works. So we went over the class exotic glaive and also the exotic pairing. Now, the reason this works so well is obviously you're getting the turret from the melee damage, and you're also charging your Burning Fists, and next, the icing on the cake is going to be the Banner of War. Defeating a target with a melee attack, finisher, or sword to raise a Banner of War that pulses with energy, periodically healing nearby allies and increasing melee and sword damage. So more melee and damage increase, melee and sword damage, but primarily we're focusing on that melee damage. But when you think about the three things that we're getting from it, we're getting the heals from Banner of War that, goes all the way up to 4, which is going to pulse in a green circle, and it'll heal the teammates that you have nearby. And if your teammates are defeating targets, it'll also charge the banner, which will increase the speed of its pulses, healing your teammates even more. So not only do you have basically a traveling healing turret being yourself or just a way to heal your allies, now whenever you're in there dealing that melee damage, you're able to raise a healing turret of your own that's also going to top off your allies that you may not be near, or allies that don't necessarily want to be in melee range. Now that we've gotten a general understanding of how the build will work, I'll just briefly talk about the class aspects and fragments, because truth be told, it is relatively straightforward. You punch, you melee, your turret is charged, and you get more melee damage, and then you can heal, drop your healing turret, and then you're really just a healing machine. You're very tanky. There are alternative ways to run this. If you're not necessarily too worried about killing the enemies with the melee, but I personally like doing that, you could opt for something like Abeyant Leap, which would make the woven mail a lot more accessible. But as I mentioned, we will get into the fragments because you will be getting woven mail with this setup as well. But I think this just makes it a lot easier if that is something that you're interested in, or you simply don't have Wormgods Caress. But with that being said, let's talk about the fragments and the aspects. The Shackle Grenade, we have that for a reason that is going to be explained with the fragments. Obviously, Frenzied Blade is a standard. Your lift doesn't matter. And we have the Rally Barricade personally to just stand behind and dump some rounds just in case it's necessary. But you can also choose Towering if that's what you prefer. But that cooldown is way shorter on Rally, just simply put. Now, we're using Dranger's Lash, which is activate your barricade ability to create a ripple in reality that travels forward along the ground, suspending and damaging the target's hit. Now, there's definitely an argument for Into the Fray, which is destroying a tangle or casting your super grants Woven Mail for nearby allies. While you have Woven Mail, your melee regeneration is increased. At least for me personally, I wasn't using the tangle. Like, I just didn't see myself going out of the way to destroy tangles whenever I was simply meleeing stuff. And I know that is a quick way to get woven mail just within the class itself, but my ideology behind it is that if we're suspending things, we can get that from the fragments. And whenever I say that, I'm really referring to the Thread of Wisdom, which says defeating suspended targets creates an Orb of Power. And then next we have the Thread of Warding. Picking up an Orb of Power grants woven mail. So kind of circumventing that aspect choice. But those are two of the fragments that we have, and we also have Thread of Generation. Dealing grenade damage generates grenade energy. which is going to be for that shackle grenade, because we're going to be suspending targets, and then that plays right back into Thread of Wisdom. Defeating suspended targets creates an Orb of Power, and if you're doing that with any of the Siphon mods that you have in the head slot in your armor, you'll actually more than likely create those too, and then you'll have access to that, that woven mail yourself. Now, it wouldn't be as easily accessed by your teammates, but this is kind of a little bit of more of a personal build. And our first fragment, unfortunately we got to it last, I guess it doesn't necessarily matter, is going to be the Thread of Continuity, which reads Suspend, Unravel, and Sever effects applied to targets have increased duration, so that Suspend that we're obviously getting from our Shackle Grenade and also Dranger's Lash to have a better chance at creating those Orbs of Power to pick up for Woven Mail. So more survivability on top of the fact that you already at times will have a healing turret that is extremely accessible. You get it really fast with the new changes to making it proc off melee hits, and you also have Banner of War proccing all the time to heal you, and then simply put, you can also just block with your glaive. Now, I guess we could talk about the secondary weapons. I'm currently rocking double special weapons. I have the Lost Signal kind of used a lot, and I think for this build it would work really well because it'll just do a little bit extra chip damage to the enemies that you're able to kind of bunch up and go melee. But I also really like Unsworn, or if you have any of the new hand cannon rolls that you might prefer, like the Unloved, that is another very solid choice given they have that subjugation perk. I feel like the new dungeon weapons are phenomenal picks to fill in that primary weapon slot. And our heavy slot, I'm using the Pro Memoria, which you could also swap for something like Retrofit Escapade, obviously to take advantage of those void things in the artifact this season, and I have 21% Delirium and some other things in there as well, but this is going to be really, preferential. But the things that are going to be also benefiting us in the artifact, aka the Tablet of Ruin, we can talk about that very quickly as well. Now, jumping into the artifact, we have quite a few things that are going to be accessible to us, especially for this build. And the first one that we're going to have, obviously, is going to be Unstoppable Glaive, which, lets you take out an unstoppable champs with a glaive. Very, pretty simple. And also, I'm using an LMG, so we have overload machine guns as well. So 2 ways to deal with those particular champions immediately. Next up, we have Unraveling Orbs. Picking up an Orb of Power or a Tangle grants Strand weapons Unraveling rounds, so I'm personally using the Pro Memoria, so that would help a lot for me. And then we also have Volatile Marksman, like I was saying, if you're using the Retrofit or maybe the Corrective Measure or some type of Void LMG, or even the Hammerhead. Rapid Void Weapon Precision hits and Rapid Void Weapon Final Blows grant Volatile rounds, which, if you didn't know, grants your weapon anti-barrier as well. So that's, basically it'll function similarly to the Unraveling rounds would on the Pro Memoria, basically giving you that anti-barrier. In the next slot, we have something that would work really well with Into the Fray, and that's Elemental Siphon. Rapid Final Blows with a kinetic weapon or a weapon matching your equipped super create an elemental pickup that matches your equipped super. So like I was saying, if you had that either the Unloved or the Trace Rifle like the Unsworn, you could potentially just kill some enemies with that, and then it would help you get that Tangle to proc Woven Mail if you opted for that instead of Dranger's Lash. Also in the top slot, we have Hold the Line. While surrounded, machine guns and glaives gain increased reload speed and stability, and Final Blows heal you, folks. So you're getting a lot of healing from this kit. You're getting heal from the Banner of War, and you're also getting a heal from the Restorative Turret from the Edge of Action. So it's actually unbelievable sustain that you're getting from this build alone. And also another one that would probably help out with special ammo if you are rocking double special, but I haven't really had an issue on, ironically, even though I'm rocking glaive, Trace Rifle, or glaive, area denial. Defeating powerful combatants with your finisher spawn special ammo for you and your allies. Defeated subjugators, tormentors, and champions spawn more ammo. Then we have Malign Harvest. Rapidly applying volatile causes your next instance of void weapon damage to create a weakening burst, and that's, obviously if we're rocking Hammerhead or something, but primarily for this build, and you're in the Strand subclass, we have these as well. Damaging unraveled targets with a weapon occasionally spawns a Threadling. Nobel, Rapid Glaive, Melee Final Blows grant special ammo, glaives, additional ammo. Blocking damage with glaives increases their melee damage to targets. There's so many things that go into this build. I'm trying to keep it as brief as possible, but there's like a bajillion things that is going to make this thing work really well for you guys, I promise. And in the last slot, we have one of the newer ones, Limit Break. Casting a super while you're critically wounded or have an elemental buff matching your super element grants a period of increased super damage. So if you kind of have an oh crap moment and you need to pop your Berserker, then you'll also have that increased damage on the super as well. And it already does a pretty hefty amount of damage on its own. And then lastly, Heavy Ordnance Regeneration. Dealing sustained damage to targets with a heavy machine gun, which we are currently using, or rocket launcher, grants damage resistance and increases grenade and melee regeneration for a short duration. So extra resistance on top of the healing, the woven elven mail and the healing that we're all getting. Tried to keep the video as brief as possible, but it is a lot of explaining and stuff for the build. There's just a lot of things that go into it, especially this season with the Tablet of Ruin. Hopefully you guys take this out there and you enjoy it, but it has been your boy Turk here at SGN Hub, and peace.